So, here we are at this time of the month again, where I am doing my wrap-up for the month of March. Now, this month I read an astounding 21 books. That is a lot. And to be fair, largely it was in part to the 24-hour readathon I did, where I read 12. But still, 21 books in 1 month, that is good. So, I'm going to do as I usually do. I'm going to talk from lowest rating, which is my DNFs, straight up to 5-star ratings. Then I'm going to give you an update on my statistics for the month and where they fit in with my goals. Also, what I'm going to be doing today, mainly because I decided to just film this wrap up extremely late, on the day it was due, and probably about an hour before it was due, I'm going to do this in one take. Yes. I decided to challenge myself because I left it stupidly until the last minute to do a one-take challenge. So here we go. That's going to go bad. Just wanted to warn you. Okay, so the first book I did DNF this month, it were bad. And that was A Liverpool Lullaby. I've unhauled the book. I don't have it anymore. I got rid of it. But it was awful. And that is the story of a young girl from Liverpool who's working in her father's shop. She doesn't really like her father. He's quite an oppressive man, especially to her. And it's set in early 1900s, I think 1901, between 1901 and 1910, something like that. And a woman walks into the shop one day and drops dead. And she finds out fairly quickly that the woman is her mother. And she had previously been told by her father that her mother had died a long time ago. So all of that comes up. To be honest, I'd like to tell you more. I don't really know anymore because I kind of DNF'd it at that point. But I know it's about her escaping her father's life, trying to build a life of her own. And she falls in love with someone. And it's just kind of like a cutesy little story. Nothing that really interests me. Especially not the fact that it was my grandmother's book. That was never my kind of genre. I went into it knowing I wasn't going to enjoy it, but I went ahead with it anyway, and I didn't like it, so I DNF'd it. Now the next one I DNF'd was The Best of Me by Nicholas Sparks. I tried so hard. I tried so hard. But it was a trope I hate. It was a romance genre which is never going to go well down for me. But I tried. It is a book about two people. They was in love in high school sweethearts, and then life separated them. And then when they come back to the hometown for the funeral of a friend, they meet again and rekindle their love affair. And that's pretty much all I know about it. I thought I'd give it a go because it was on my TBR. It was a trope I hated, so I thought, great, let's do it. And I've watched the film, and I thought the film was okay. It wasn't really for me, but I have seen the film, so I thought, right, I'll give it a go. Let's just get through it. And I couldn't get through it. The writing style was just not for me. It was all just... I think maybe before I started, I kind of said I wasn't going to enjoy it. But I think it was at a bit of a disadvantage because I'd seen the film, I knew what was going to happen, and it just wasn't getting there quick enough for me. It wanted to do it slowly, and whilst I appreciate that, obviously the book will want to take it slower and get more into it. I didn't really like it to begin with, so going slower was definitely not for me. So, those are the two I DNF'd. 1-star ratings. I had none. I am so happy. I love the fact that I had no 1-star ratings because I hate 1-star books. But I did have a 2-star. And this was one I just read at the last minute, at the very end of the month, just because I took part in the Bookie Trials Royal Weekender. Don't know why. Just kind of jumped on last minute. It tends to be something I do. I say, no, I'm not going to get involved. And then last minute, I'm like, actually, I want to. So I did that. So, part of my part of my job, because I fit into the Magi category, was to read a book with a purple cover. So I did that, and I read The Shade of Hetty Danes. Now this book I read in high school. This was one of the very first books I read. I think it was the second book I'd ever read. And I loved it when I was in school. It was great. I didn't know anything about it. I just kind of picked it up and decided to read it, and I got to take it home over the summer holidays. So to be fair, I had all summer to read it. And I think I read it 3 times over the summer, and I loved it. And it is basically, it's about a brother and sister who go to the local reservoir, and they see a ghost. This lady. They see her, and it scares them, but they take a picture of it, and then it starts becoming a mystery. And now this is a woman called Hetty who disappeared years ago, and it starts uncovering the mystery of why is this ghost suddenly around, and they're doing works on the reservoir so it's drained out, and then all just builds up and builds up. And to be fair, I gave this a 2-star rating because I hated it. I hated it. The writing style was so cheesy. It was written by, I don't want to say an old man because I feel that's quite cruel, but he's not the person who should be writing these books. He's a decent author, but he writes text messages like an adult would write a child sending a text message, with the letter U on spelling tonight like to NITE, and it was just cringy. And he tried, these children were about 10 and 12 or something like that, and he had them use phrases like my old mate. Like, no one ever says that. Like, oh, what you doing tonight, my old mate? No one does that. No 10-year-old does that. Not even an adult does that. That's just really horrendous. I that's unforgivable. But it was not written well. I didn't like it. I found myself cringing really badly at just how it was written, and questioning myself, thinking, how the hell did I like this when I was younger? What was my reading taste like back then? And it also got me very scared because I have a number of books on my TBR shelf that I read when I was in school. And now I'm like, oh, are they all going to be that bad? I'm waffling. I'm just going to get to the point. Didn't like it, but it was a very easy read. Like, I got through it fairly quickly. It's 250 pages. I got through it just... I started it in the evening and then I finished it the next morning. So, a very easy read. Just, it wasn't for me. Like, I don't despise the book, but reading it, I was just like, oh, why? Why have I done this? So, not the biggest fan. Then, 3-star. I had a lot of 3 stars this month, and I don't feel quite pleased about that. I feel as though it's clearly a very middle of the pack month. And I feel like with everything going on, that's just fairly standard for life, isn't it? So, keeping on track with the Bookie Trials Royal Weekender, I also had to read a book that introduced me to a new world, and I did that. And then there was another one. I don't remember what it was. But it was something, and it fit. So, whatever it was, I read The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, and I enjoyed it. This was my first ever dip into high fantasy. I don't really think I've read that much fantasy books to get a full knowledge of where I was going, but this was the most fantasy. Like, it was an entirely new world with creatures, and I don't think I'm a fan of that. Like, I don't dislike it. It was okay. I enjoyed the read. And I do still have the Lord of the Rings books, and I'm going to read them, and I'm quite excited to read them. But I'm not sure this is for me. Like, a lot of people rave about the type of writing, about it being such high fantasy. For me, not so much. I think after reading this, obviously I didn't know beforehand, I'd never done it. But after reading this, I'm still going to try more just to check if I'm wrong. But I think that I prefer the type of fantasy where it's real world and things kind of... I don't really know how to explain it, but... something like Harry Potter. It's magical, it's fantasy, it's a new world in the sense of Hogwarts, but it's kind of set, it's real people, it's Earth, it's set in natural things, like out of Hogwarts when he goes home to Privet Drive. He's in London, he's in England. It's somewhere a bit easier for me to understand, and I think I prefer that. Are there any other books that let me just check my shelves. Oh, I have no idea. Absolutely no idea. But you get my point. I like the type of fantasy books where it's within the real world. Because I don't know, I just kind of, although you know that, like, in my head, I'm like, magic doesn't exist. This type of thing doesn't exist. But if it's in the real world and there's a story around it and magic exists in this real world, I'm just like, maybe they're just really good at hiding it. And I love those type of stories that maybe that's true. And you just never know. So I think I prefer that. Still love the book. I thought it was great. Not really my cup of tea. I am planning on doing a dedicated review for this. So overall, I gave it 3 stars. And, you know, maybe when I reread this, I'll change my mind. Maybe a bit later, I'll change my mind. But for now, that's kind of where it was. It was a good story. It just wasn't for me. So I put that one down. Now, the rest of these books, I have quite a few. I have a list. Let me just check. Of course, how could I forget? Daddy Needs a Date. Right. Now, Daddy Needs a Date is about 2 men. They meet up to go on a date. And one of the men travels the world as disaster relief. He works in countries that have been tormented with hurricanes or earthquakes, things like that. And he goes over and offers support and relief. And it's lovely, really. And then the other one, he is father to one of his own children and then his sister's 3 children. So he's the father of 4 children. And his sister died and his nieces have all come to live with him. And he is the father to them. They go on a date. And that's where it goes a bit crazy. The first date, I loved it. I thought it was great because it was awkward. It was a bit like, oh, cringy. And it was perfect. But after that, he finds out one of his children are ill. And he has to take care of her. Then pretty much everyone in the household gets ill. And Alex, who is the disaster relief date, comes to help take care of them and basically ends up moving in. He stays there for weeks. And then they're pretty much just a ready-made family. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I weren't the biggest fan of it. This happens very early on. It's not really a spoiler or anything. And it shows their relationship develop. And I really like it because there's issues, there's love, and it's lovely. It really is a lovely, kind of light-hearted, warm book. But I just didn't like it because I'm not a biggest fan of romance as it is, but it felt kind of insta-lovey. So I gave it a 3 star. I don't really want to talk too much about all of these books because I've talked about them so much in my weekly vlogs. So that's pretty much all I'm going to say about that. It was an okay book. It was fine. It just weren't really for me. Now the next one, what is it? Annihilation. And that was another book I borrowed from the library via ebook. And I really enjoyed that. That was my viewer's choice pick when it came to my TBR. And it was such an interesting premise. It sounded so good, but the writing style of it just put me off because it didn't give me what I want. When I read what the story was about, I was so excited because I thought this is going to be amazing. And when it actually came to it, it just felt like it was half of what I wanted. Like, the story was great, but it didn't feel as though the drama was there or the tension, or I don't really think we got any answers. Like, I didn't. Like, everything in my head that I was thinking, right, will it be like this? Will it be like this? Will it be like this? It was just like, And I think I'd recommend this book for someone that loves this type of work. I just know for me, it felt like it was only half done. It left me wanting more, but not in a good way. Not in a sense of, I can't wait to read the rest of them. It was more a case of, oh, is this really it? And that's why that got 3 stars for me as well. Then, after that, I read a classic, Lord of the Flies. Now, that book was good. I did enjoy that book. Everyone told me I'd hate that book, but I really enjoyed that book. Still only got 3 stars, so clearly I didn't enjoy it that much. I think some of the characters were so flawed that it made it difficult for me to like them. I think a lot of the writing style was a bit outdated, and had it been kind of rewritten now, I would have loved it a lot more. So that's pretty much it. writing style, characters, issues, but the actual plot of the story is amazing, and I thought that was great, so loved it. Then I read my own book, my self-published book, which was Distance New Recruit, and that was the first book in the Distance series, and that is about a group of teenagers who have lost their parents, and they've been adopted by a man who has taken them into an organisation he helps run called the Distance Team, who go back in time to save important people who can change the course of history, who can do great things, who can put bad people away, who can make scientific discoveries had they not died. So they go back to save them so that they can do what they do. And it's about this group of teenagers. And I love the story. Obviously, I just do it for a hobby. It's nothing that serious, so I know it's not perfectly written, which is why I gave it 3 stars. As a story, fairly solid. As a writing project, as an actual book, not so much, because the writing style isn't great. So, yeah. I don't really want to harp on my own books, so I'm not going to. So, what did I read next? I have to keep checking because I read so many, I forgot. I think that's it. That's all of my 3-star books. Okay, so then on to my 4-star books. The first one is Cradle and All, and I loved Cradle and All. I did this with that was weird. I did that as a buddy read with a book fiend named Mel, and we read the book, and it's by James Patterson. It is about two virgins on opposite ends of the world who both find out that they're pregnant. One is carrying the son of God, one is carrying the son of Satan. And the story basically revolves around finding out which one's carrying which and what it means for humanity. And it was a great book. I know Mel wasn't the biggest fan. I will link her review of this, or wrap up of this. She's mentioned it. I'll link that video in down below. And I loved the book. I thought it was just so well written. It was so different to the type of book I'd read before. And it was just so interesting. I thought it was great. I do agree on some points. Mel did say that she felt as though the book ended as though it was setting up for a sequel, as though it was just beginning. Like, this was the prologue to the actual book. And I get where she's coming from. And I think had they made a sequel, that would have been really good and really interesting. But they didn't. So as a standalone book, I think it was fairly solid. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. Then, on to my next 4-star book. What's my next 4-star book? I really don't know. Right, my next 4-star book was the ARC book that I read, and that is Our Little Cruelties by Liz Nugent. And I love this as well. It was a great book. I've mentioned issues before in previous videos. Don't want to harp on them too much. But it's not a linear narrative, and the fact that it's not linear takes something away from me, because the fact that it's not linear means, well, it just, there was no reason for it to not be linear other than the fact that she wanted to change it up a bit, and I just weren't a fan of it, so not a big fan. But that's it. Great book, absolutely loved it. I thought it was amazing. Honestly, such a good book. I'm really regretting doing this in one take now. I really need to plan. I hate it. Okay, now my final 4-star books was the Saga of Darren Shan. Now, these are the books I did as my 24-hour readathon. It was very painful, I'm going to be honest. It was stressful, but I absolutely loved every minute of it. It was great, and I just can't complain. It was great. I loved it. I only gave it a 5 stars because there was definitely some 5-star books, but there was also 4-star books in there. And to be honest, I read them all, like, obviously continuously, however you want to say it. I read them all one after the other, and they just kind of blurred into one book. So I can't give a personalised review for each of the books, because I don't remember all the details that happened in each individual book. So I just gave the series an overall rating of 4 stars, because some were 5, some were amazing, some were 4 because they were very good. So I just gave it an overall rating of 4 stars. And then, finally, I read one book that was 5 stars this month. And that was, if I can pick it up, Elevator Pitch by Linwood Barclay. Now, I loved it. I have done a dedicated review for this, so check that out. I absolutely loved it. I don't want to talk about it too much. Everything I want to say about it is in the review. I thought it was great. There was plot twist galore. I had my issues with it, which I will mention in the review that I did. It was just great. So check my review out if you want to know more about this. Definite 5-star for me. Was so glad because I was quite worried that Linwood Barclay was going to let me down with a bad book, and he didn't. So, right. So I've done that. Now what? What comes next? Books I'm currently reading. Okay, I can do that. I'm currently reading 2 books. I am reading To All the Boys I Loved Before, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm doing it as an audiobook, not taking it too quickly. I'm just kind of savouring it because I don't really do audiobooks, so I just think that the more casual I take it, the more I'm going to enjoy it, and I am really enjoying it. It's a great book. I love listening to it via audiobook. So, excellent. Loving it. We'll mention that when I finish. And then finally, I'm reading I See You by Claire McIntosh. I should have finished this. It was on my TBR, but it's been a busy month. I never actually got around to finishing. I did the 24-hour readathon, and then I did the Bookie Trials Raw Weekender books, so it just kind of got pushed to the side. But I'm loving this. I love it. I love it. Honestly, going to be doing a dedicated review for this. If it's a 3 cons, 3 pros, or just a gush review, I will be doing something because I love this book. I cannot tell you how much I love this book. But not going to mention it anymore because that is going to end up next month. So, time for my goals. So, I wanted to read a very... Hang on, I've got my laptop. Oh, really should have planned this out. Right, so for my goals, I wanted to do a variety of genres. And I've definitely done that, which is great. I read 1 YA book, I read 2 sci-fi, 1 fantasy, 3 thrillers, 12 supernatural books, 1 classic, and 1 romance. And that's great. Normally, I just stick to thrillers, so the fact that I did 3 doesn't surprise me, but I've definitely got a wide range, so I'm really happy with myself. Then, when it comes to books that fit my 2020 reading challenge, I have that. I have The Hobbit for... What's the category? I don't even know anymore. Ugh. I have The Hobbit. That goes on there for something. Oh, a book in another worldly setting. There we go. That is what The Hobbit is. And then what else do I have? Annihilation. And I think that's a book with a 1-word title. Okay, I really don't have the challenge in front of me, so I can't think of what they are. But I think a book with a 1-word title is Annihilation, and a book that takes me to another worldly setting is The Hobbit. So they are both on my challenge list. Overall, I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 out of the 20. So that's good, considering that's 3 months in, I've already done 8. That's nearly half. So I'm happy with that. And then for my James Patterson, I only read 1 book, sadly. I really wish I'd done more, but that's not how it worked this time. And I did Cradle and All. So, love that. And then, in terms of the type of books, the format of books, I read 18 physical books. I read no audiobooks. Started an audiobook, but I didn't finish it, so I can't count it. I read 1 ebook, which was... What was the ebook? Our Little Cruelties, as an art book. And then I had 2 books from the library, both via the Borrow Box app that I use, because really, we can't go to an actual library. But they're from a library, so I will include them as well. And I think that's it. They're all my challenges. They're all my goals. That's all my stats. I'm done. So, I'm sorry this was a bit of a hot mess. I did it in the 1 take, though, so I'm really proud of myself. If I ever get to this point again next month, please remind me of this. Actually, just show me this video, because my God, it is stressful. So, that is it. Ugh. I'm just dropping them all. I don't even care anymore. These are all the books that I read this month, including all the ones that are on my ebook list, and also the books that I've already unhauled, which is quite a few of them. And that is it from me. So, not only have you got this in 1 take, you also get to see what my filming habits are like, because I do this every time I film. I just edit it out well. So, Thank you so much for watching. I post every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. So until next time, see you later. Oh God, kill me.